Shalom, shalom, Yisrael, Yahonathan, we here humbly so on what I believe they call the 25th of July. You know, sometimes I lose track of those things. Looking for the great day of Yahweh, more so than these days of man. I am here at a hotel on vacation this week. My wife and I out of town. But Yahweh's work does not stop. Yahweh's work continues on. And look for me on WFBR 1590 AM from 1 to 2. I'm downloading this first. And we're on tour portion number 40. We only have about 12 more to go. We're moving fast along. This one is BALAK, Devastator. BALAK, Devastator. Now last week in Hukak, which means decree, we talked about the death of Miriam, how the death of Miriam parallels Yisrael's relationship with water throughout her life with her brother from the beginning when she followed him in the river. She's always been associated with water and her brother Moses and the children of Israel. Beautiful parallels there. When she died, the water stopped. And it's at that point we know what happens when Moses strikes the rock twice to get the water. He understood the connection, but he still missed his opportunity to teach the actual Pesor message to Yisrael. When Yahweh says, speak to the rock, his son, he's building his foundation on his son. And that was Moses' opportunity to give Yisrael some insight that he had on what was really going on. This is more than just them at this time. This is more than just Yisrael, that generation at that time. This is for all the generations of Yisrael through this time and then the time in the future whenever Yahweh comes. He is the rock. That should have been the first Besor message sent to the whole house of Yisrael. The first time when Moshe got water from the rock, when he was told to smite it, only the elders were there. In this incident, when he was told to speak to it, all of Yisrael was there. He was supposed to speak the Besor message to the house of Israel, and he failed. That's what kept him out of the Kodesh land. Now, of course, he's saved. Any of us who are kept out of the Kodesh land for whatever purpose does not mean we're not saved. But here the message is the Torah, Moshe, the 613, does not enter into the promised land. That is not what's going to get you into the promised land. See, hear the point. Do not miss that point. The 613 leads you to the promised land. The good promises, but having a circumcised heart for the love of Yahweh Shua, the testimony of Yahweh Shua gets you into the promised land and eternal salvation, better promises. Obviously, if we don't make it in, if you have Yahweh Shua in your heart, you're still saved. You know Moshe is in the kingdom. Followed this, you have the death of Aharon, a very touching moment. His son takes over. And then we have the ruddy heifer doctrine. The ruddy heifer, again, Yahweh Shua is the X-Man. The ruddy heifer testifies to Yahweh Shua. All the blood sacrifices of the 613 covers sin. Blood does not clean anything. You don't clean with blood. A blood stain is evident on anything. Blood can stain anything. Blood covers. It does not clean. The ruddy heifer takes us from the blood covenant, but they didn't get it, to the water covenant. From being covered to being clean. And there's a two-part process in cleaning for that. Also, in last week's Torah portion, we see that Moshe finally reveals who the Erev Rav are in covering Aaron's rod that budded almonds, which is a testimony of Yahweh Shua, who was going to die on the almond tree on the Mount of Olives. We know the menorah is an olive branch and it has almonds on it. The menorah represents Yahweh Shua. Yahweh Shua is the X-Man. All things go through him. Then you had this rod that came from the tree of life. It is the branch that Adam and Eve ate from, and the serpent. Now that rod which budded almonds to testify that Yahweh was only working through Aharon as his priest. Then, now we see that Moshe covers it with this brazen, machinated snake. That is the Erev Rav, as a made people, genetically made people, mixed with Esau. Also, remember, something that most people look over is that the altar, the incense altar, was covered. We know now we have the rod that's covered, and we have the incense altar that's covered. That's significant. Both of these most Kodesh items are covered because of our transgressions. That's significant. I might even have to go ahead and spend some more time on those two items. Now here we have Balaam. Balaam being hired by Balak. Balak means devastator. He was also a soothsayer, a master practitioner in witchcraft. He knew that Israel, because of his witchcraft, he knew that Israel would have a moment where they would be weakened, but he didn't know when or where. He just knew he had the prophecy to knowing that they would be anger Yahweh. He saw Balaam, who was known to have the power of his mouth to bless and curse. And he saw Balaam, who could know when this would happen. So he figured if they get their two skills together, you have Balak and Balaam, then they could go ahead and bring down Yisrael, who was poised to take over the land. So we see that what happens is you have a real prophet here in Balaam, just like Eob and his three friends. They were all Goy prophets. There are in the Torah, there are 7 non-Hebrew prophets, legitimate prophets, not just soothsayers or witchcraft practitioners. Eob and his 3 friends were truly prophets, but they were not Ibarit. Now Balaam was the greatest of all Goy prophets, equal to Moshe as a non-Hebrew prophet, equal to him in power. When he spoke, things happened. But he could not approach Yahweh anytime. Yahweh, he had to wait for Yahweh to come to him. Moshe didn't have Yahweh come to him. Moshe went to Yahweh. So we got a powerful prophet, and they have history. They have history. If you go look and read the book of Jasher, read chapters 72 and 73. And it lets you see why Balaam hated Moshe so much. They have prior history. And the prior history that pitted Balaam against Moshe, Balaam lost twice. Okay? He lost to him, if you read in Jasher chapter 72 and 73, we find that Balaam, after Moshe left Mizraim for killing the Egyptian soldier, he ends up helping the king Kikanos of Cush. He helps him in battle and wins some wars, and Moshe becomes known as a mighty great warrior. He had warrior history in Egypt as well. So he had experience in fighting and leading men in war. He did so for Kikanos in the land of Cush. They go out to battle and they win. While they were out, Balaam, who was a prophet for Kikanos, took the opportunity to seize headship. While Kikanos and his army was out, he made himself king of Cush and had the people build up the wall, build up the gates all around the city. High, mighty fortitude. So when Kikanos and Moshe and his army comes back, they can't even get in, and they're besieged. He also, with his sorcery, has serpents as a barrier all around the land. Serpents, poisonous serpents all around the land. So they couldn't really get through. So they sieged the city for 9 years, still unable to get in. Finally, Kikanos dies, and the people make Moshe their king. Moshe, with his wisdom, has them get storks, raise them up, and storks are natural enemies of serpents, and they eat them. He had them raise them up and train them even better to kill these serpents. They were guarding the city of Cush that Balaam made himself king over. Now he had all the soldiers keep their storks hungry for 3 days before the attack. So for 3 days they were hungry. Now they're really starving, hungry. Then the soldiers go out and march into the serpents and release their storks, and the storks eat the serpents. Then Moshe was able to go in and breach through, and they take down the land of Cush. Balaam escapes and goes to Egypt. So that's his first man-to-man contact with Moshe. He loses his rank and hides out in Egypt. So this is the backdrop of why he hates Moses so much. And there's other reasons too, but I'm being brief here. So Balaam ends up being the chief sorcerer for Pharaoh. We know that I taught this lesson how Pharaoh was a machinated, engineered, half man, half sea creature by Satan. So Pharaoh was not he was a mankind. He hires Balaam as his chief sorcerer. Now this is part 2 of Moshe versus Balaam. We know what Moshe did when he came back, and that's why Yahweh had him make one of the first signs, let him know, I know who you are. He had that rod turned to a snake as his first sign that I come from Yahweh. And you know who I am, because I'm the one that kicked your butt at Cush when you sought these snakes as your barrier. Well, here, boom. And this was not a regular snake. This is a machinated sea serpent creature. This is like unto what they saw, what Adam and Hawa saw in the Garden of Eden on the tree of life and tree of good and evil. This is deep stuff. It all comes back and circles back. So we know how Moshe and Aaron defeated the sorcerers with the 12 plagues, the 10 plagues, time and time again. So now we see that he hates them even more. Balaam hates Moshe. Now we come to this Torah portion here where Balak, whose name means Devastator, seeks out Balaam because of the power that Balaam has in his words. And Balaam is eager to do the job. Eager. Let's go to, and this Torah portion goes from Numbers 22, verse 2, through Numbers 25, verse 6. Yehonathan we with you here, Yahweh for Christians, talking during the Torah portions, number 40, Balak, Devastator. Let's read in chapter 22 and verse 2 of Numbers. And it reads, And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So Balak, his father was Zippor. Again, we got this bird, and this bird that eats snakes. Okay, so these names all mean something. So he's the one that hires. He has this. Remember, Balak also is a sorcerer, but he's not a prophet. That's why he gets Balaam. He figured he'd get a prophet and a sorcerer together to defeat Israel. In verse 4, we see that he also had the Midianites come. The Midianites gave him some insight because Moshe spent time at Midian, obviously, and they're the ones that gave some wisdom also on how to defeat Moshe. They said the children of Israel have power orally in their mouths. This is the backdrop also of why Balak saw Balaam, who had power in his mouth. So we got power in the mouth of Israel against power in the mouth of Balaam. It's a good battle we got going here with two men who have history, Moshe and Balaam. All right? Moshe hit him twice. Now we're going to see what's happening in round 3. So we find that if you think about this, before we become harsh and judge Balaam, which we know he was wrong, we know that. We know how the story goes. But look at yourself. Look at myself. And I thought about this. What if you had absolute power to know who was going to win the Super Bowl? And you used that power to get rich. You know you could use that power and get rich off of it. You knew who was going to win the Preakness. You knew who was going to, you had abilities, special abilities to be able to speak a thing and it happen, and you know you can get rich off of it. Would you do it? And we know that most people would do just that. And that's what Balaam did. He took a great gift and he used it for temporal blessings instead of eternal blessings, like any other prophet would do, like Moshe would do, or anyone, Isaiah, Jeremiah, anyone. They could have all used their gifts for temporary blessings, but that's not what they did. This is what Balaam did, and this is what many other people would do. If you absolutely knew that you can get rich by knowing what's going to happen in the future, and most people would do that. So we find that Balak is pre-warned by Yahweh, don't go with these men. And he warns them that you can't go because the people are blessed. You cannot curse the people with the power of your words because I've already blessed the people. When Yahweh blesses, it cannot be cursed. Obviously, twisting words, as Hasatan does, Balaam was going to find a way to get and do this anyway. And let's read, because if you read it in English, there's a lot of misunderstanding of whether Yahweh said, yeah, you go ahead and go. It's no different than when your mother said, you go out of this house if you want to. You go ahead and go out with that boy if you want. Now, the mother did say, hey, you go ahead and go out with that boy if you want. But we know that's not what she meant. And she really means, don't you leave this house and go out with that boy. So this is the basically the backdrop of what Yahweh is saying here. You go ahead and go out if you want. Now, obviously, we know that Balaam did go, and Yahweh was angered by it. Yahweh said, okay, you're going to go out, but you're going to only speak my words. And the power of the words is something we need to really look at. And I praise Yahweh. I pray that Yahweh bless this ministry with thousands and thousands of followers. And forgive me, dear Yahweh, for saying, I've said a number of times that, I only have a few followers. But those are words that I'm going to take. I'm going to, by the power of Yahweh and by his anointing, have him overcome those words with his words and barak this ministry and the books and the channel with tens and thousands of followers in the name of Yahweh Shua HaMashiach. In reading this story, I was thinking about Haman, who hated Mordecai. And out of his mouth, he said evil things against Mordecai. Remember when Ahasuerus said, what should be done to a man for honor? Because we know that what happened, that Mordecai saved King Ahasuerus years before with a plot that he overheard. And he had passed on. So Ahasuerus wanted to honor Mordecai, who never got anything for this. So he asked Haman, what should be done for a man that the king wants to honor? And so Haman said all kinds of great things should be done. Give him a robe, put him on a horse, have somebody lead him, and say all kinds of great things. And then we know that King Ahasuerus says, good, go get Mordecai, and I want you to do that for him. Oh, that burned him up. What came out of his mouth is what had to be done, and it was done. So here, let's go back to Balaam. What comes out of his mouth is going to have to be done. So Yahweh is going to dictate that. We're going to see who has the true power of oration. Now, we go on with this story. We see that Yahweh Shua is going to appear to Balaam not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, the story goes that when we know that Balaam already was lame, he already was lame in one foot, so he already had a limp. Much like Jacob had a limp, much like Yahweh Shua had a limp. And that is not something to brush over. We have a man who in some ways appears like a righteous man. He had the limp, like Yahweh, like Jacob. He had the bop, he had the power of his mouth. But what Yahweh added to that, since he refused to heed Yahweh's word, when Yahweh came to him, Yahweh only came to him at night. There's going to be a time he comes to him during the daytime. But right now, when he comes to his Hebrew prophets early in the morning. Yahweh says, I send my men out early in the morning, rising to speak my word. Yahweh goes to his Hebrew prophets during the daytime. But the Goy prophets, and there were only 7 of them, this was the last and greatest. He comes to them at night. This also clears Yahweh from anybody in the world who says if we had a great prophet like Moses, we would have followed Yahweh. And it is not true. Yahweh has given them many prophets, and they did not follow. The world does not follow Yahweh. So here's a great prophet, Balaam, and he used his powers against Yahweh. So anyway, Yahweh blinded him in one eye. So now we got a man who's blinded in one eye, who he's humbled, but still not humbled. He's limping and blind on his donkey to go to curse Yisrael by twisting words. It's the same as Hasatan did to Mother Hawa. He could not use Lashon HaKodesh, the Kodesh language that created all the creation, and lie to her. He had to present truths in another way. That's what he did. He presented truths in a different way to Mother Hawa. He couldn't just out and out lie because he was speaking the language of creation at that time. Now you can just out and out lie because I'm speaking the language of slavery right now. There's no Lashon HaKodesh is not being spoken by anyone on this earth, not in its pure form. So now people just can out and out lie as you wish. Now, in verse 23 of chapter 22 of Bamidbar, Numbers, and it reads, And the ass saw the Malachim of Yahweh standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And the ass turned aside out of the way and went into the field, and Balaam smote the ass to turn her into the way. We have an ass here, and it's a female donkey. She is machinated. This is an engineered beast, an engineered creature. And it's a genetically engineered creature. Okay? We know that going to, in Genesis, I think it's Genesis 36, talk about the history of the generations of Esau, and how in his line, Anah is the first that mixed seeds from the water and himself with an animal, and he created like donkeys and asses and mules. He created these things. And it takes a lot of genetic discernment, evil discernment, to do this. So we have Balaam on a genetically modified creature who saw Yahweh, but he couldn't because he had an uncircumcised heart. He also was blinded in one eye by Yahweh because he continued on. And he continued on like a donkey in heat for this money and for his hatred of Moshe and the children of Israel. Now it's interesting that first time the donkey goes out into a field. You know, in the field you have the wheat and the tares. In the field you have Yahweh's people and we have mankind. And the only one who will have discernment can differentiate between man and mankind. He didn't have that discernment. We continue on. So he resumes his journey, and then we go further, and he strikes. Now we go the second time. We see that the ass sees Yahweh again. Now we go to verse 28, and Yahweh opened the mouth of the ass, and he said to him, Why have you done this to me? You have smitten me 3 times. Let me go back up though. So the next time the ass sees the Malachim of Yahweh, which is Yahweh, and he thrusts him against the wall. Remember Yahweh told Shaul it's hard to kick against the pricks. Because this is when Shaul was persecuting Yahweh's children, his people. This is the same thing. Balaam was kicking against the pricks. He was going against the wall. He was fighting against himself, fighting against the wall, and he got crushed. So now the way is narrow. Yahweh Shua says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No man comes to the Father but by me. So he missed the first message of the wheat and tares. Now he's missing the second message of there's only one way to righteousness. Only one way, and not the way you're going. He strikes the ass again. Now the third time, he goes into a much... and it was the grapes, that's the thing. Okay. He goes into a grape field. We know that Yahweh uses sickle to get the overripe grapes. Again, this is another message of Yahweh's judgment. Yahweh Shua, before he goes to Mount Zion, he gleans all the grapes. He strikes them with his sickle, with the sword of his mouth. And so that was it. That's judgment. He missed the first two callings, and this is judgment. This is no turning back now. This is judgment. When you go against the grapes, when the grapes are cut down, this is judgment. So now we got Balaam, who was a prophet. Really, he's lowered now. Let's go to Joshua 13:22. Joshua 13:22 shows you how Balaam moves from a prophet down to just a regular old soothsayer. Balaam, also the son of Beor, the soothsayer, did the children of Israel slay with a sword among them that were slain by them. Now he's been relegated down to a soothsayer. That's lower than being a prophet. Before he was a prophet, now he's just a soothsayer. He's a man of hire for money, for the power that's supposed to come out of his mouth against Yahweh's people who had the power in their mouth. This is important because remember that Hasatan is the accuser. And when he was allowed to continue to go back and forth to Hashmaim, he no longer is allowed to go back, but we know of several instances where he did go up to Hashmaim to give his report. And he constantly accused Israel. If we know that in the mouth of two witnesses, everything is established. Here's the message that we need to get. Do not join in with Hasatan in accusing your brother or your sister. Speak told words out of your mouth. Speak what is sadiq and righteous out of your mouth. Do not join in with Hasatan in accusing Israel or your brother or your sister. And this is what Balaam was set to do. He was set to join in with evil against Yahweh's people. And we know how this is going to happen. Yahweh's not going to allow that to happen that way. We know that. Now, one of the things that evil, wicked people do is try to copy what is righteous. And he had Balak get 7 rams, 7 lambs, 7 altars, trying to mimic what the righteous did. And we know this is not going to work. Yahweh knows the heart. On the outside, it may look like he's doing the right thing, offering the right animals on the right kind of altars, not hewn, but built up altars, having the garment on, saying the words, the Iberit words, but it was all for naught because it was not Yahweh's will. We cannot kick against the pricks like he told Shaul. Let's look at Genesis. Now, I'm going to read the blessings in full because they are beautiful. They're amongst the most greatest things in all the scriptures are these blessings. We know in Genesis 22, 17 and 18, Yahweh says to Abraham that his children, he gives him 3 blessings actually, that his children, he would bless with a whole lot of children that can't even be counted, and that they will go forth and conquer. They will be conquerors. And the third thing was that through these conquering seeds of Abraham, the whole world will be blessed. That's 3 blessings, okay? Now, how does that parallels with the blessings, the orations of Balaam? Let's go to 23 and 10. Now, this is when Balaam is trying to curse, but he cannot do that. So Balaam said to Elohim, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, has said unto me, saying, Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt, which covers the face of the earth, and come down, curse them from me. So he is being given this commission, and he takes it. And he takes it with vigor. He takes it with your high servant, and he takes this with vigor, and he's going to do this with all his might. All right, now let's see if it's going to work. And he says, surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination. And this is interesting. This is not what he wants to say. But if you look at it, he's going to say, well, like I always say, what I tell you to say. So he cannot overcome what Yahweh is telling him to say. And this is in 23:10, all right? Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time, it will be said of Jacob and of Israel, what has El wrought? Look, the people will rise up as a great lion and lift up himself as a young lion, and he will not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. So that was the blessing when Yahweh says that we will slay our enemies. So what about the one of the children? He said we have many children. So he says, way back up before that, when Balaam blesses the people, he says, and he looked up at his parable. He took up his parable. And I like this word took up. This is like a heave offering, a wave offering. If you we're going to talk about this in Daniel 7, about the beasts that are raised up. So we in verse 7 of 23, he says, and he took up his parable and said, Balak, king of Moab, have brought me from Aram, out of the mountains of the east, saying, come and curse Jacob. How will I curse whom El have not cursed? Or how will I defile whom Yahweh have not defiled? Because from the top of the rocks I see him. From the hills, look at him. Look, the people will live alone and will not be reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob and the number of the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. That's the first one. Now, he don't want to live righteous, but he wants to die the death of the righteous. And then over here in the next blessing is when he says they're going to destroy their enemies. So he gives the blessing of the many children, and then he gives the blessing of the enemies being destroyed. Next, he gives, so Balak is upset by this time and says, hey, don't bless him or curse him. Don't do either one. Just don't. If you're not going to curse him, don't bless him. Don't do that. Now, how does this compare with what Yahweh said to Abraham? If you go to Genesis 12:3, he says, and I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curse you. And in you will all families of the earth be blessed. That's two parts. He's going to bless those that Yahweh blesses and curses. We cannot. This is what Balaam got wrong. He thought that he had power. People kept saying he had power to bless and to curse of himself. Now realizing that Yahweh has to allow it. Even to this day, we think we have power to bless and curse in ourselves. And that's not what Yahweh said. He says he will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse them. He will do it. And he also said he will curse him. Yahweh is not cursing the nations who curse us. He blesses them who bless us, but he's only putting the curses of the nations on him, one man. And that man is Hasatan. Hasatan is going to receive all of the curses. He says in plural, he will bless them. But in singular, he will curse him. Yahweh is going to put all the curses of the people on him. They all going on one man, the man who is the accuser against Yahweh's people. That's who gets cursed. We are the vehicle of the blessings and curses of the world. We do not do the blessing and cursing. If we live righteously, if we keep Torah, the world who blesses us get blessed. If we deny Yahweh and the Torah, the world who curses us will be cursed. They get blessed and cursed based on what we do by us living and obeying Torah. But we ourselves do not directly bless or curse anyone. And this is what Balaam got wrong. He's thinking that he can personally do it. And he couldn't. In Numbers 22:6, it shows how he tries. He tried. He really did. He says, "Come now, therefore, I pray thee, and curse me this people, because they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I will prevail, that they may smite them, and that I may drive them out. Because I know that whom you bless is blessed, and whom you curse is cursed." That's what Balak was thinking. Balaam received that, but it's not true. It's not true. Whatever he did in the past, and helping out these other nations, helping out Moab and whatever, Yahweh allowed him to do this. Now we see that since he wanted to take the power on to himself and not give Yahweh the credit, he was reduced to just being a sorcerer, a mere sorcerer. So 3 times he didn't get the message with the donkey, and 3 times we see in this number 3, when he tries to curse Yisrael, he blesses Yisrael. So he sees that he can't do it, but finally he gets a clue. He says, you know what? Let's read. I'm going to read chapter 24, verses 1 through 9. In its entirety. "And when Balaam saw that it pleased Yahweh to bless Yisrael, he went not as the other times to seek for enchantment, but he set his face towards the wilderness." So he sees that he cannot curse the people. It pleases Yahweh to bless them. He said, I'm going to look towards the wilderness from where they came. Let's look to something barren. But look at the people. They're too beautiful. They camped about in their divisions, by their colors, by their standards, and they're beautiful people. Let me look towards the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Yisrael abiding in their tents according to their tribes. And the spirit of Elohim came on him again. And he took up his parable. It's like a heave offering, okay? And this man was very gifted and talented in how he spoke. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eye open has said. Now he's open. Now his eyes open. Unlike the times when he was on the ass. He has said, which heard the words of El, and which the vision of the Almighty falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are your tents, O Yaakov, and your tabernacle, Yisrael. As the valleys are, they spread forth, as gardens by the riverside, as the trees light aloes Yahweh hath planted, and as cedars trees beside the waters. He will pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed will be in many waters, and his king will be higher than Agag, and his kingdom will be exalted. El brought him forth out of Egypt. He has, as it were, the strength of a wild ox. And he will eat up the nations like enemies, and he will break their bones and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he lay down as a lion, as a great lion, who will stir him up? Blessed is he that blesses thee, and curses he that curses thee. So he didn't say the part that through you all nations will be blessed. He just said the blessings and curses. Remember, only Yahweh can bless. And he even said it, he didn't even quote it, he did quote it right. He said, blessed is he that blessed thee, and cursed is he that cursed thee. So Hasatan will be cursed for cursing us. Don't anyone else join in with him. Okay, don't join in. Don't be the second witness. But he didn't say, in you all nations will be blessed. And that is the actions of us keeping Torah. Keeping the Torah blesses the earth. When we live righteously, others benefit. Keep Shabbat. Keep his ways. Eat Kodesh. Speak blessings out of your mouth. And that will lead you to the Holy Land. This will lead you to the Holy Land. It's not going to get you in. Moshe was the 613. He didn't get in. But keeping Torah will get you to the land. From there, you receive Yahweh Shua, who is the X-Man. So now we see that Balak is really upset. He says, therefore, now, he says, Yahweh has kept you from earthly honor. And this is a true statement. Who cares about earthly honor? Who cares about wealth? If someone told you was going to live to be 200 years old and you will be the wealthiest man on earth for 200 years, what happens at year 201? You die. You will live in richness for 200 years, but knowing, how happy would you be? You're 190 years old. You said, well, I got 10 more years left of living. 9 years, 8 years. You, instead of enjoying your largesse, you'll be too busy looking at the years you have left. And that's a sad way of living. It's a sad thing to live according to temporal goodies on this earth. What is a good thing is to love Yahweh with all your heart and might and soul, and seek the better things or the better promises. That is what is a good thing. And that's the better thing. And this is what Balaam was missing. And this is what many of us are missing now here. I implore you to seek after Yahweh Shua with all your heart and all your might and your soul. Love him and keep his commandments. Obey Yahweh. Seek a relationship with him. And these things lead you to him, and he will lead you to the way everlasting. In verse 25, 1 through 6, this is going to lead us into the next Torah portion next week. In 25, 1 through 6, we see that Balaam, and he was very wise. He figured out another way of doing this thing. He says, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredoms. So what he did was, he gave a plot. And actually, let me see. He told them, listen, I'm going to tell you how you can get these people. And he tells them, we don't know in this Torah portion what he said. We find out later. But he said Yahweh hates immoralities. Yahweh hates immorality. And if we can get them to be immoral, then this can get Yahweh to rise up against his people. So this is the tip that he gave to Balak. It does not tell us it right here. Okay, all we know that we see that in chapter 25 that they rose up to do whoredom. And one man was so brazen to actually commit whoredom right in front of the tent of meeting. And we know that what Phinehas did, and he spears them through. So we're going to find that even though Balaam could not curse the people, he could not curse us, he figured out a way to have us curse ourselves. It is very important that we watch what comes out of our mouths, Israel, that we honor Yahweh without not only our actions, but with our words, that we honor Yahweh with our words to encourage one another, to lift one another up. One of the things that hurts my heart is to see what we do to each other in social media. I have purpose in my heart not to join in with this. I purpose in my heart not to join in with blasting and cursing our peoples on social media and even in private. But we are to love Yahweh and love his people. We are man. All others are mankind. These men and women are us. We are made after Yahweh's image. And Yahweh, we cannot say we love him whom he has not seen, and then we don't love our brother whom we do see. Love your brother. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Love him and follow the golden rule. Support one another. Treat one another. Love one another in Yahweh Shua HaMashiach. So until next week, Yonatan that we hear Yahweh for Christians. Shalom Aleichem. Peace be on you.